IVM.
Hello, we're Team Splainer. Welcome to an all-new episode of Press Decode, a weekly podcast where we take Splainer's mission to declutter the news one step further. Check out our newsletter for more stories, and we've got a 1-month free trial for you in the show notes, so definitely check it out. But for now, it's time to sit back, relax, and don't let the news give you the blues. I'm Sara, your host for the day, and today I have with me both Prafula and Vagda. As always, we have 3 segments for you. In our big story, we're looking at the sorry state of mental health in our armed forces. For the food for thought segment, we're talking about a lawsuit where a couple just really wants a grandchild. And then, in our final segment, we will be roasting and toasting our fave and least fave items. So on to our big story for the week. Like I said, we're going to look at the alarming trend of very poor mental health and trauma management in the armed forces. So recent government data revealed that in the central armed forces, which is essentially arms like the CISF, BSF, CRPF, etc., there have been 25 cases of fratricide only between 2019 and 2021. Whereas there have been 345 cases of death by suicide between 2017 and 2019. As for the tri-services, there have been around 950 deaths by suicide between 2010 and 2021. And earlier this year, in March, 2 retired CRPF officials also filed a PIL in the Supreme Court. They sought the urgent rectification of the traditional ideas and, the focus on bravery and physical fitness in the armed forces, which now we've come to realize is often at the expense of mental wellness. They drew a correlation between the mental health of armed police personnel in the conflict zone and contended that it led up to high incidence of death by suicide and fratricide. And in case you're wondering what fratricide is, it's defined in military terminology as the accidental or deliberate killing of a trooper or troopers by fellow trooper and troopers. Now, I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you look at it, it is more often than not when subordinates kill their superiors as a means of expressing their pent-up frustrations, and hence then it again points to poor mental health wellness in the forces.
Okay.
Which is why it becomes an important factor as opposed to just looking at suicide. So the petitioners had stated that the union government ought to periodically carry out specific mental health assessments of all their personnel so as to better the situation at hand, so to say. Another study that was conducted by a defense think tank and was released in January 2021 showed that more than half of the 13 lakh strong Indian army was under severe stress. More than half, which is insane. And currently the situation is understood to be so bad that the country is losing more soldiers to suicide, fratricide, and other untoward incidents than to enemy action on the borders.
I have a doubt about that particular study from January 2021. Was it the one that was done by IDSA?
No. This is the one by USI.
Okay, cool.
And the Army's response back then, also when the USI study was released, was that the survey sample was too minuscule to reach such far-reaching conclusions. And in the past, the Defense Ministry has gone as far as to attribute the deaths of their own personnel to family or land-related disputes alone being operative.
How do they make these assessments alone? कर लिया तुमने, study कर लिया. सारे 13 lakh strong पूरा Indian Army का तुम्हें पता है कि everybody went through land or family related dispute.
Correct.
Otherwise, it is too minuscule a sample.
Correct.
It's ridiculous, man.
Yeah. And, to make it worse, I was going to put in numbers, but it just gets too depressing. I will leave the numbers at this. The losses that we've had in the armed forces, over 900 in the tri-services, nearly 1,200 in paramilitary, these amount to almost 5% of the total strength of our armed forces.
Wow.
Yeah. That is how many of our soldiers are dying by suicide. But, then it got us thinking, obviously, why are these soldiers dying by suicide at such alarming rates? Obviously, stress is built into the job of a military man. They have extended work hours with little to no sleep, and then they posted at borders and in, less than ideal conditions. But also when they're withdrawn from borders to offer law and order services, right? Sometimes it is for essential purposes like an election or a rally. Other times it's for a parade. And because then these withdrawals get extended for so long, the frustration grows because once you are deployed for so long, you don't get to advance further in your career as a military man. And
so like promotion related also.
Promotion related, yeah. And from what I read, apparently there is a general lack of opportunities if you are starting at like
the soldier level.
Yeah, a soldier's level, a lower level than, if you gave an exam and entered or something. So especially people on the lower tiers, they have said, we don't see our careers going anywhere.
Also, it's important to know, like, so especially with the soldiers as opposed to the officers, the amount of time that they spend in the services is much lesser.
Right.
So, but they don't much get a lot of employment post
After,
their stint.
yeah.
Correct.
So even post retirement, it's a lot of stress because, I mean, have you seen the economy?
Right. Yeah, and that brings me to like moving away from like economic stress. While you're on the job, say if you're posted on the border and you have to watch your co-workers and friends get injured or die. And then the army is infamous for largely, letting these issues go unaddressed, in the sense that I didn't see a lot about these officers getting mental health support or counseling support in that sense. And I found out recently about this thing called the Sahayak system or the orderly system. And this is a remnant, I learned, of the colonial era that has stayed on stubbornly in our forces. And these Sahayaks, they are supposed to protect officers and maintain the officers' weapons and generally lend a hand during times of war. This is how one website put it. The role of the Sahayak is to provide a cup of water or tea and to take care of the equipment of the officer, because the officer in question would be busy planning the war. So basically, they're treated like errand boys. And it's gotten worse now, because now that most officers really don't have to plan a war, these Sahayaks get enlisted in tasks such as walking the dog, babysitting, driving the kids to school and back. The officers that they're assigned to, often the officers are deployed in a different posting, and these Sahayaks stay with the family, which is against the rules. So they're basically errand boys, drivers. Some people wash these people's clothes. And this is all, they actually have a list of tasks that Sahayaks are not supposed to do, opposed to what the Sahayaks can be assigned to. And every single Sahayak that this article in the Quint spoke to said that they were being assigned the menial jobs that the list specifically says they should not be. And to top it all off, obviously careers are stagnant. To top it all off, they don't even have a physical training.
I think to bring it up here, I think what happens more often than not, especially right now, is especially with families, I've seen they tend to forget that they are also soldiers.
Right.
That basic understanding of that they are also soldiers would change so much. Because again, like playing the devil's advocate, I see where the system came from, but it is not where it is.
It shouldn't be the same if you want to have it in the modern day, right?
It is not wartime crisis right now. So
correct.
The way it's used is, that's where it gets lost. Like you tend to forget that they're soldiers as well.
Yeah, and I think this also is very systematic in the sense that these Sahayaks don't even have physical training every day like other officers would. And I was thinking about how these Sahayaks, they don't have really a grievance redressal system in place because it is so ingrained in the system. But it's not only them, it's also higher up officers, right, who under the powers that be only get like trickle down communication or a broken chain of grievance redressal. Or, I've read anecdotes where, they said the higher ups dismissed any issues or challenges that they were facing, maybe mentally, because, it's the nature of the job since you are in the army. And one thing that I found most disturbing, I think, was that any officers that are injured in clashes or law and order situations are dismissed as domestic issues by their superiors so that they can be denied disability benefits.
What?
Yeah, are we sure about this? Because there is categorization and then your pension changes.
right.
I'm not too sure.
So this was again anecdotal in the Quint. I didn't find too much concrete.
No, but this could be like a, the way you get back. So say in this
Right.
entire grievance redressal sort of system, when you don't have a system for your grievance, and it likely comes out insubordination, with your officer that you're assigned to, that officer is going to get, is going to give it back to you by, letting you go and dubbing it as domestic issues so that you don't get
Correct.
disability. So I think it's that rather than being a trend,
Right. Okay. Fair.
right? That sort of kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense because I did not find a lot of like concrete data on this, but I did read a couple of, they said it was first-hand accounts. There was one in the Quint and then there were a couple others here and there. But again, I mean, even if it is a one-off, I don't think it's just one person in the entire army system that is suffering like this, right?
Correct.
Yeah. No, so wait, in the causes, what have we come down to? We have, I think, everything that all the commissions and everything that all the research think tanks, everybody just brings it down to work stress, right?
Yeah.
Which could be anything. And it could be personal, it could be like related to your officer, your senior officer, it could be related to your working conditions, it could be anything, it could be literally anything. And it all like comes down to how much does the government care for your mental state, obviously the kind of stress that is experienced by armed forces working in like conflict zones and in harsh weather conditions, it's something that civilians, like, we can't even begin to understand, that kind of stress.
So much for a government that monetizes military action.
Yeah, okay, no, I'm
Gains out.
yeah, I know you
I just had to. I'm sorry.
Yes, but it's been like throughout. The problem hasn't solved over the years. I'm not just going to blame this particular government. Maybe they should really do some.
Across the governments, it has been a very strong political.
But maybe this one should do something about it, right? Because they love the military so much.
I mean, I'm saying successive political governments have loved the military so much on the outset and still remain not done. So I'm not blaming just a certain government.
Okay, cool, fine. No, but in this experience, in this like the kind of harsh experience, I only learned yesterday, and that also thanks to Sara, that the term shell shock was coined by soldiers themselves around the time of the World War I, by when it was a huge military problem, because soldiers were experiencing symptoms of fatigue and tremors and confusion, nightmares, impaired sight and hearing, and which basically resembled the diagnosis of the more modern diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And at the time of the World War I, though, I mean, when doctors were already overwhelmed with injured soldiers, they didn't know how to deal with someone who had no visible injuries. They wouldn't understand why these soldiers are deserting their force or, not following orders, because they just didn't get it. And many of these soldiers were tried and executed for deserting the army.
Exactly. They were court-martialed on charges of cowardice.
Yeah. And their folks, like their kin, didn't even get like pension and stuff, obviously because they were court-martialed. But the matter has been raised in Parliament, and several governments have tried to address the issue, which is including stuff like sensitizing military leaders, having a pool of, counselors, improving rations and clothing, incorporating a better and liberal leave policy, and having accommodation for married folks. Oh, thank you very much. Which is all great. I mean, I think it's the bare minimum, but it's still not enough to make a difference to the number of suicides yet. Add to that the stigma of mental health disorders. I mean, even in regular life, mental health disorders are viewed as something that you would, they're swept under the rug. But in a workspace where you have to be brave and courageous and strong all the time, the stigma of being viewed as weak must be affecting nearly everyone. And no wonder like half the force is under stress. So in that respect, like, protecting mental health, the efforts of protecting mental health have to be even more rigorous.
Precisely, right? Like the job, as we've seen, is fraught with a variety of stressors. And let's be real, if nothing else, India can't be safe if its troops are stressed. And Raghu Raman in the Bio summed up this need for like better mental health wellness in the armed forces quite directly, actually. If we want a humane and moral army, then we need humane and moral soldiers, not cold-blooded mechanical killers, because it is only the latter who can kill without a part of them dying as well.
Oh my God. That's a great quote.
Yeah, when your job calls for this, at least have it done the best way possible, I suppose. On that note, we come to the end of our first segment. We will be right back after a short break. You're listening to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Tugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Hello and welcome back to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network. We're Team Splainer, and in today's Food for Thought segment, we are taking a swift U-turn from everything heavy that we spoke about and going to by far the most bizarre story I've seen over the past week. In case you missed it on the internet, thanks to like a flurry of memes or like the news sources, in the most bizarre news that will make you go WTF, since I can't
That is a
curse.
very long build-up.
Since I can't curse. An Uttarakhand couple is suing their son and his wife for failing to give them a grandchild after 6 years of marriage.
Nice.
That's our only response? Okay, nice. Nice indeed. Sanjeev and Sadhna Prasad claim that they used their entire life savings for their son, right from paying for his pilot's training in the US to supporting him when he didn't have a job during recession to a lavish wedding for him. They've put numbers to the figures. About $65,000 on just pilot training, to a wedding in a 5-star hotel, to a luxury car that was gifted to them, which was worth $80,000 as a wedding gift. They say, my son has been married for 6 years, but they are still not planning a baby. At least if we have a grandchild to spend some time with, our pain will be bearable. I apologize for my troll voice. I can't help it. Like, I can't do these quotes with a straight voice. Like, I saw y'all giggle. I apologize. But going back to their amazing quote, I have so many questions because he speaks about pain becoming bearable. Like, I was very confused as to what the said pain was. Turns out the pain is straight out of the Bagban handbook. Yet another quote. My son and daughter-in-law are living in 2 separate cities because of their jobs, causing us immense pain. We treated our daughter-in-law like our own daughter. Despite that, she seldom stays with us, adding to our sufferings. We even told her that if she is worried about taking care of the child due to her job, she could give the baby to us so that we could look after his upbringing. We are hardly left with any money because we spent everything on our son. They're asked for said pain a compensation worth $650,000, which is around 5 crore rupees, or a grandchild within the year. Yes, there is a time limit to said ask. And if you're still interested in the math behind the number, they claim they spent close to 2.5 crores on bringing their son up since birth, and the remaining 2.5 crores is for damages caused by said mental distress. You'd think the number is sort of nicely adjusted for inflation, no? Like, how old is this son? 30 years, 35 years at best? Kafi inflation. Anyway, the aspiring, I call them aspiring grandparents. They're not yet there. Their council calls this a first of its kind case, and if nothing, I'd have to give him that. I have never heard of something like this. I mean, it's unreal, right? As time passes by in this country, it's so incredibly hard to tell whether headlines are from like reputed sources or straight up from The Onion.
Or the Kandha.
Correct, Kanda. Indian represent.
No, but speaking of like headlines that should have only stayed in the Onion, there is one more. It's kind of on the same spectrum, but like this person did a complete 180. This is a whole movement of people who wish they weren't born. I mean, there's plenty of those on the internet. Nothing special. But the kicker here is that they resent their parents for not taking their consent before they were even born. There is a Mumbai man, Raphael Samuel, who decided he would sue his parents for giving birth to him. And according to a 2019 article, he had been on the hunt for lawyers to represent him for about 6 years. And obviously, no lawyer wanted to take up his case. What is funnier still is that both his parents are lawyers.
I would think that he would, in 6 years, he would himself study law and go fight his own case.
I mean, might as well with all the time he spent looking for one. And I read this, I think, in the BBC. He said he told his mother over breakfast that he would sue her for giving birth to him. And his mother said, welcomed the decision. And she said, okay, I will destroy you in court. So,
Except he never got to court.
Yeah. I assume he'll get a beatdown when he does also. There's a whole movement. He has a Facebook page and there's a bunch of other pages and Reddits and whatnot. And this is an actual school of thought called antinatalism. And this is how its biggest proponent describes it. Is life worth continuing? Yes, because death is bad. Is life worth starting? No.
Wow. For all this thought and philosophy, they did not think through the basic of how was he supposed to give consent.
Consent.
Yeah, that you spent so much time and thought in developing a school of thought, so to say.
No, it's a school of thought that basically it builds the case for being lazy. Because what's the other stuff that they argue? They argue that people should be paid to live and be maintained for the rest of their life. Since they were not asked to be born, and for this very reason, they owe nothing to their parents. And so unless parents have the wherewithal to finance the lifetime of their child, of their offsprings, they should not have the right to give birth.
Oh, Vagda, can I come in here? The dude I was talking about, he has said, oh, we're born without consent and then they send us to school and then they send us to work. This is tantamount to kidnapping and slavery.
You said Mr. Samuel, right?
Yes.
My metaverse of madness is going to be Mr. Samuel being born to the Prasads from Uttarakhand. Can you imagine? You owe a child, but bro, I owe you nothing. I wasn't supposed to be born to begin with. Oh, I'd pay to see this.
But think about it, no, like it's such a good movement. You don't have to. I'd like to be maintained for life, personally. But legally and sadly, there is no ground for it. I mean, Samuel never got to court because no lawyer fought for him. And on the total contrary, the law imposes duties on folks to maintain their parents under the Maintenance of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007. I think it's 2007. But that is if they are unable to provide for themselves. So unless Uncle G and Auntie G, the aspiring grandparents can prove it, they're not going to get anything from their offspring. Yeah. And the thing is that they filed this lawsuit on grounds of mental harassment. I mean, there could easily be a counter lawsuit, against the parents. There's no right to demand a grandchild. And I'm hoping that the court sees this and throws the lawsuit out. The purpose of which...
see, how does this play out in court?
It will be thrown out of court.
Let's hope, but okay, the wild chance. What are they going to say?
So this is why you live in India.
Mujhe pota chahiye.
And you know what's the funniest? They say what did they say that we spent 65,000 on your pilot training, on a wedding in the 5-star, and on a luxury car, and you'll just mix up all of this, and then you just put it all in a room, and then you'll have a baby come out of it. What is that? I mean, this is not some Powerpuff Girls recipe.
And now when we're going to this, they said that they're now running out of money, okay? So on the one hand, they're like, listen, we are in financial distress because of the amount of money we spent. On the other hand, they're offering to say, we will bring up the child, just give birth.
Oh, yeah.
Where are you getting the money for that, sir? And ma'am?
Valid.
Should I be a lawyer now?
Yes. But don't do that to yourself.
You know what? I think the matter will be heard, if at all. But it's striking that these people got to where they are, took it to court, despite the fact that there is no basis to the claim.
Such a solid claim. You know, in the entire society, everyone has a grandchild now. They're the only ones without one.
Right,
Ask.
sorry. Mental distress. I forgot. No, but it is concerning that these people got to the point they are. And maybe it is the nature of our laws. Because significant intends to uphold status quo. And by extension, I think it upholds patriarchy and quote-unquote traditional family structure, right? Vagda told us this yesterday, that ancestral property cannot be willed away and must stay in the family. So how much more status quo can the law get? Like, it is in the law that a father does not have a choice to exclude his son from the possession of his ancestral properties. Yeah, I guess like every...
Or daughter, by the way, since 2005.
Since 2000.
Since 2005. Oh,
Yeah.
born
Women
in the
were
right
given-
time and age.
Women were given rights to their ancestral properties in 56 and only full and equal rights in 2005.
Ah.
And if you're a Muslim woman, you only get half the share of what your brothers or male relatives get. And if you are a Christian woman in some communities in Kerala, you're not getting property at all.
Excuse me? I did not know that.
You thought you were sitting in Cochin getting some good, building up a case for something, but no.
Oh
It's
no,
time to
this
move
pod
on.
is just... This is disappointing now.
No, but Vagda, please come in if you can think of anything more. But I could come up with dowry, custody cases, and, consent in a marriage as gender biases that in family law that are heavily influenced by patriarchal, archetypes. I read that I think the World Bank said that even though dowry is outlawed, 95% of weddings still will have dowry
It's
being
only
given.
gift, beta. It is only gift. It's for you only.
That's why Uttarakhand couple got the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're a Keralite Christian woman, you will be told, Arey, this is your gift, beta, this is your ancestral property, and go. That is all they're being told.
I did not need this information. I put an end to this segment. On that note, we come to the end of this segment. We will be right back after a short break. You're listening to Press Decode and the IVM Podcast Network.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Mind the Gender Gap, host Naina Kumar talks to experts Niharika Vora and Dipti Ravula about the social, structural, and economic barriers women entrepreneurs face. On Big Talk About Tiny Humans, Devi Shobha and Meghna explain how to talk to children about porn. Can you be forced to vote? Host Priya Mirza talks about this on The Longest Constitution. On Press Decode, Sara, Vagda and Prafula discuss the recent controversy surrounding Indian languages. And on Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav shares exactly what India's culinary heritage can teach us. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, we've been doing a series of profiles of people within the office, so do check that out for sure. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We have a page on our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, with a list of all our channels. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you, the listener, responds to the advertising on our network. And also, we just want to know a little bit more about you. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It will really help us build some better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, SBI Life Insurance and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
Welcome back to Press Decode and the IVM Podcast Network. It's time for our final segment this week, Roast or Toast. And I'm finally back home. I do have a least fave item after a very, very long time. It's an absolute no-brainer of an item, but turns out India has deadly roads. Shocker. But what's new, however, is that we have a global ranking to confirm our most jaded suspicions. According to a new study, we have the 5th most unsafe roads in the world. This rating is based on 5 factors: WHO's road traffic data, the maximum speed limit, use of seatbelt, driver's blood alcohol concentration limit, and alcohol-related deaths. And in peak desi behavior, since I'm disappointed, I'm going to tell you who else is on the bottom end of this list. Kyunki acha lagta hai ki other people are also having it bad. Turns out we're followed by South Africa, Thailand, the US, and Argentina.
Oh, dude, Thailand. So this friend of mine had gone to Thailand with on her own, and she met someone there who lived in Paris. And neither of them had international driving licenses. So they were supposed to go somewhere, and they were taking a car or something. And the guy who was renting them the car asked both of these people that, where are you from? Do you know how to drive? And the lady from France was like, yeah, I know how to drive. And he's like, but where are you from? And she's like, I'm from France. And he's like, no, you can't drive here. And then he asked my friend, where are you from? She's like, I'm from India. Ha ha ha. Here, you take the car. Skills. You have to have skills for driving in Delhi, in India.
Again, staying on topic, but it's funny enough. So apparently in Dubai, the driving test is really, really hard. So anecdotal from a friend, but someone she knows was a driving instructor in India and failed the driving test in Dubai 11 times.
Oh my God. 11 times.
Again, anecdotal, so take it with a pinch of salt. But when I tell you, I could not stop laughing for half a day.
Truly.
Wow. Okay, let us pivot a little, because I have yet another contribution to rich people doing dumb things.
You come with this list every time.
I'm impressed at the dedication.
This is just what catches my eye the most these days, I guess. I'm so in tune with it now. So the executives, the director and the deputy director at the UNOPS, the Office for Project Services, which is responsible for logistics and other operational services the UN needs, gave away their entire investment portfolio, which is about $6 million, to this British businessman after the director met him at a fundraiser at a single party, and they gave him their entire investment portfolio. How this is possible? The agency stockpiled a lot of money because they received payments from different countries where they provided services. And then they decided to loan it out like an investment bank and make profit, which for the UN is, I don't know how this went under the radar for so long. So they gave this guy like about $60 million and then later loaned out $3 million more to his daughter for this conservation project that she headed for oceans. What happened next is this dude used the money to pay off his business loans, about 20 million. And now the UNOPS has that much amount, 20 million in bad debt. And they have to somehow make it up now because they've been found out and the director has been asked to resign by the Secretary General.
Oh, wow.
To top it all off, and this was, I think, like a week or so ago, the director asked her to step down and there was this whole drama. The New York Times has like a lamba read on it. And to top it all off, this daughter of the businessman used this 3 million to produce a pop song about saving the oceans. And she did not pay the singer.
What does she use it for?
I have no clue. And this singer also apparently was told, oh, it's for a fundraiser and it's for charity. So this person also did not ask for the money for so long until the New York Times came knocking.
My God.
Wow. I like this Prafula segment.
Yeah.
I really dig it.
What new scam happened in the last week? Let's have that. Okay, cool. I'm here. I'm back, obviously, with a Fave item. Now, do you guys recall that the city of Gaya now has an international airport of its own?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And now that it does, that the International Air Transport Association gave it its own international airport code, which was, come on, tell me. You know it.
I know it. G-A-Y.
Gay!
Gay.
It was my fave item of the week a few months ago. Of course it was. So obviously
He was
people...
collective, but you just called dibs earlier than us. That's what happened.
Yes. Okay. So it was my fave item. So obviously people of Gaya are really upset. Don't joke about this, guys. It's not fair. Okay. Nobody is giving their city the respect it deserves. After all, it was the place where Lord Buddha once attained enlightenment. They tried to appeal against the IATA's decision, but the association refused to change the code unless there was a justifiable reason, primarily concerning air safety, which there wasn't, obviously. So now what have they done? They're changing the name of their city by adding a G to it. What? It's soon going to be Gayaji. So the equivalent of calling your chacha, Chacha Ji. I don't know if you've ever heard of this happening anywhere else in the world. Like you change the name of your city to, like imagine Delhi Ji, Chochi Ji, Faridabad Ji.
By the way, guys, we've taken the internet a little too far. And we're going to give context of what this Chochi that Vagda keeps saying is. It's a tweet. It's a glorious tweet. I'm going to link it in the show notes.
Does the Gaya civic body have literally nothing else to do? Ho gaya Swachh Bharat. Let me go see Gaya, how clean it is. I mean, all they care about is changing the name of their city to Gayaji. सारा important काम दुनिया का तो हम ही कर रहे हैं. Gaya civic body को कोई काम नहीं है.
And that was our show this week. Thank you so much for joining us on Press Decode. You can catch us every Thursday on the IVM Podcast Network. And guys, please remember, don't let the news give you the blues.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, I mean, like, we'll do a random drawing of like maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
If you're a cricket fan, check out Edges and Sledges, India's favorite cricket podcast.
The podcast focuses on Indian cricket, the IPL, and has a ton of banter both on and off the field.
We talk about the week's biggest cricket stories with current and ex-international cricketers, coaches, or sometimes just between us.
And it's hosted by me, DJ.
Me, Varun.
And me, Ashwin.
New episodes release every week.
You can catch us on the IVM Podcast's website, app,
or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.